Hi, my name is Rebecca Holloway. I'm 49 years old, and I'm going to tell you about the day I realized that not every father coughs up black mucus into the bathroom sink at 5 a.m. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And subscribe if you want to hear more about what life really looks like for working families in America. It was 1983. I was 6 years old, living in McDowell County, West Virginia coal country. The kind of place where the mountains are covered in morning fog and the economy runs on men, willing to descend into darkness every single day. My daddy was one of those men. His name was David Eugene Holloway, but everyone called him Gene. He was 29 years old that year, 20 years younger than I am now, though back then he seemed ancient to me. He had hands like tree bark, perpetually stained gray no matter how hard he scrubbed. His knuckles were scarred from where the coal seams were too low, and he'd scraped them raw against the ceiling of the mine. We lived in a company house on Slate Creek Road. It was a small white structure with green trim, identical to every other house on our street. 17 houses, all owned by Consolidation Coal Company, all filled with families just like ours. I can still smell that house. It smelled like diesel fuel, damp earth, and Mama's coffee perpetually brewing on the stove. The walls were thin. You could hear the Hendersons arguing next door. Could hear Mrs. Patterson's gospel music through the bedroom wall every Sunday morning. Our house had 3 tiny bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen that doubled as our dining room and living space. The linoleum floor in the kitchen was cracked in a spiderweb pattern near the sink. I used to trace those cracks with my finger while Mama cooked. Daddy worked second shift at the mine 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. 5 days a week, sometimes 6 when they needed extra production. He'd leave the house at 2:30 in his coveralls, carrying his metal lunch pail that Mama packed every single day. Black coffee in the thermos, 2 bologna sandwiches on white bread, an apple, a package of Nabzo's orange peanut butter crackers. The lunch pail was dented on one side from where it had fallen down a shaft in 1981. Daddy never replaced it. I remember watching him walk to his truck every afternoon. He drove a 1976 Chevy C10 Primer Gray with 1 blue door from a junkyard. The passenger window was stuck halfway down, covered with duct tape and plastic in the winter. It made a grinding sound when it started, like metal chewing on metal. Before he left, he'd always kiss Mama on the forehead, then crouch down and kiss me on top of my head. His hands smelled like lava soap, that harsh orange soap that miners use to try to scrub the coal dust off. It never really worked. Then he'd be gone until midnight. Mama, her name was Linda, worked mornings at the grade A grocery store in town, running the register. She'd come home around 2 p.m., just before Daddy left. They'd have maybe 30 minutes together before his shift started. I'd watch them at the kitchen table, Daddy eating leftover breakfast while Mama told him about her day. They'd hold hands across that table. I didn't know then that this was them stealing time. I thought everyone's parents only saw each other for half an hour a day. My brother Tommy was 4 years older than me. He was already talking about working in the mines when he grew up. Just like Daddy, just like our Uncle Ray, just like our grandfather before the accident in '74 that took his leg. Tommy had a poster of a mining machine on his bedroom wall. A continuous miner, he'd tell anyone who'd listen, could cut 7 tons of coal per minute. He thought it was the coolest thing in the world. The sound I remember most from my childhood is the coughing. Every single morning, around 5 a.m., I'd wake up to Daddy coughing in the bathroom. Deep, wet coughs that sounded like something was tearing loose inside his chest. The bathroom shared a wall with my bedroom, and the walls were so thin I could hear everything. The cough, the faucet running, the sound of him spitting into the sink. More coughing, more water. This would go on for 10, sometimes 15 minutes. Then he'd come out, go to the kitchen, and start the coffee. Like nothing had happened. I asked Mama about it once, when I was maybe 5. Why does Daddy cough like that every morning? She was folding laundry on the couch. She didn't even look up. That's just coal dust, baby. All the miners cough like that. It's part of the job. Does it hurt? I imagine it does. But your daddy's tough. That was the end of the conversation. And I accepted it, because Mama said all miners coughed like that. Because the Hendersons' daddy next door coughed like that. Because Uncle Ray coughed like that. Because at church on Sundays, you could hear men coughing through the hymns, and nobody thought anything of it. It was just what happened when you mined coal. I thought it was normal. There was a specific way Daddy coughed that I can still hear in my head, all these years later. It started deep in his chest. You could almost see it building. See his shoulders tense up. Then it would explode out of him. this harsh barking sound. Once it started, it came in waves. 3 coughs, pause. 4 coughs, pause. 2 more. Sometimes he'd brace himself against the bathroom counter while he coughed. Sometimes I'd hear him in there at 2 a.m. Not just 5 a.m., but that was normal. That was just Daddy. I started first grade in the fall of 1983 at Colwood Elementary School. The building was old, probably built in the 1950s. With that industrial tile floor and big windows that didn't quite close all the way. In winter, you could feel the draft even when you were sitting in the middle of the classroom. My teacher was Mrs. Brewster. She was probably 60 years old, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck and hair that she teased into a gray cloud every morning. She'd taught in that school for 33 years. She'd probably taught half the minors in McDowell County when they were kids. One day, in October, I remember because we were making Halloween decorations. Mrs. Brewster asked us to draw a picture of our family and write one sentence about what our parents did for work. I drew Mama at the grocery store register. I drew Daddy in his coveralls with his lunch pail. I drew Tommy with a toy truck. I drew myself with pigtails. And at the bottom, in my best first grade handwriting, I wrote, "My daddy works in the mine and coughs black dust every morning." I misspelled coughs, but I was 6. Mrs. Brewster collected our papers at the end of class. When she got to mine, she stopped. I watched her face change. Her mouth got tight. She looked at me for a long moment. "Rebecca, honey, can you come here for a second?" I walked up to her desk. She knelt down so we were eye level. "Sweetheart, your daddy coughs up black stuff." "Yes, ma'am. Every morning, real loud." "How long has he been doing that?" I shrugged. "I don't know. Forever, I guess." "And your mama knows about this?" "Yes, ma'am. She says all the miners cough like that." Mrs. Brewster's face did something complicated. Her eyes got shiny. She touched my shoulder. "That's right, honey. They do." She didn't say anything else. But I remember the way she looked at my drawing, like it made her sad. If you're watching this and you grew up in a coal town, leave a comment. I want to know if you remember the coughing too. Life in Colwood had a rhythm to it. The mine whistle blew at shift changers 7 a.m., 3 p.m., 11 p.m. You could set your watch by it. When that 11 p.m. whistle blew, I knew Daddy would be home in 20 minutes. I'd usually be asleep by then, but sometimes I'd wake up when I heard his truck in the driveway. I'd hear him come in through the back door, hear him set his lunch pail on the counter, hear him go straight to the bathroom, and start coughing every single night. Mama would have his dinner waiting. She'd save a plate from whatever we'd eaten. Fried chicken, pork chops, green beans from a can, mashed potatoes, sometimes just beans and cornbread if money was tight that week. He'd eat at the kitchen table by himself while the rest of us were asleep. On weekends, Daddy would take Tommy to the creek behind our house to fish. They'd come back with creek chubs and maybe a catfish if they were lucky. Mama would fry them up for Sunday dinner. Daddy never took me fishing. Not because he didn't love me, why? No, he did, but because that was boy time. That was him teaching Tommy what he'd need to know. How to bait a hook, how to gut a fish, how to be quiet and patient, how to be a man in coal country. I'd stay home with Mama and help her hang laundry on the line behind the house, or we'd drive to Welch to go to the Piggly Wiggly for groceries. The car we had was a 1979 Buick LeSabre that Daddy bought used in 1982. It was maroon, with rust eating through the wheel wells. The air conditioning didn't work, and in summer, that car would get so hot the vinyl seats would burn the back of your legs. But it ran, most of the time. Mama would give me quarters to get gumballs from the machine at the Piggly Wiggly while she shopped. I'd make those gumballs last the whole ride home, rolling them around in my mouth until they lost their flavor. Those were good days. Simple days. Days when I didn't think about the coughing. Or the gray tint under Daddy's fingernails that never washed out. Or the way he'd stop sometimes in the middle of carrying in groceries and just stand there, breathing hard. I just thought that was normal. In the summer of 1985, when I was 8, Daddy started coughing during the day too. Not just in the mornings anymore. He'd be sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, and suddenly he'd double over, coughing so hard his face turned red. Mama would jump up and pat his back, and he'd wave her off, shaking his head. "I'm fine, Linda. Just went down wrong." But coffee doesn't go down wrong 3 times in one morning. He started keeping a handkerchief in his pocket. A white one that Mama had embroidered his initials Andy E.H. in blue thread. I'd see him pull it out and cough into it, then fold it back up real quick and stuff it back in his pocket. One day, I found that handkerchief in the laundry basket. It wasn't white anymore. It had dark stains all over it. Gray-black stains. I showed it to Mama. What's this? She took it from me without saying anything. Threw it directly in the trash. Mama, don't worry about it, Becca. But Daddy's handkerchief, I'll get him a new one. She did, a new white handkerchief, which turned gray-black within a week. Tommy noticed it too. He was 12 by then, starting to ask more questions about things. Daddy's coughing a lot more, he said to me one day. We were outside throwing a tennis ball against the side of the house, catching it when it bounced back. Yeah, you think he's sick? Mama says all minors cough. Tommy threw the ball harder. It hit the house with a loud thwack. Uncle Ray doesn't cough that much. He used to. I heard Daddy say so when, I don't know, a while ago. Tommy caught the ball and held it. He looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Ray works on the surface now. In the repair shop, he doesn't go underground anymore. So maybe that's why he doesn't cough as much. I didn't know what to say to that. Tommy threw the ball again. We didn't talk about it anymore. But I started paying closer attention. I started noticing that Daddy would sometimes stop halfway up the stairs and lean against the wall, breathing heavy. Our house had 8 stairs from the first floor to the second floor. 8 stairs, that's nothing. But Daddy needed to stop and rest. I started noticing that when he kissed me goodnight, I could hear a whistling sound when he breathed, like air going through something wet. I started noticing that Mama washed his handkerchiefs separately from the rest of the laundry. She'd soak them in a bucket with bleach in the basement, trying to get the stains out. She never really got them out. There was a company doctor that the mine employed, Dr. Parsons. He had an office and a trailer next to the main mine entrance. Once a year, all the miners had to go get a physical, chest x-ray, lung capacity test. The works. Daddy went in April of 1986. I remember because it was right after Easter, and we still had plastic eggs scattered in the yard from the egg hunt Mama organized. He came home from that appointment quieter than usual. Mama was at the stove making dinner pork chops. I think Daddy sat down at the kitchen table without saying hello. Just sat down heavy, like his legs gave out. Gene, Doc says, my x-ray looks concerning. Mama turned off the burner, wiped her hands on her apron. Concerning how, says there's spots on my lungs. Wants me to come back for more tests? What kind of spots? Daddy pulled out a cigarette. He smoked Marlboro Reds back, then lit it. His hands shook a little. The kind you get from breathing coal dust for 11 years. Mama just stood there. I was sitting on the floor in the living room, maybe 10 feet away, playing with my Barbies. They were talking like I wasn't there, like I couldn't hear. What did he say you should do? Stop smoking. Get more rest. Drink more water. Daddy laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. He didn't say quit the mine, though. They never say that. Maybe you should. And do what, Linda? Farm. There's no farming jobs. Factory? They're all closing. This is what I know. This is what pays for this house and that food you're cooking. Mama's shoulders sagged. I know. Doc says lots of miners have spots. It's just part of it. He gave me an inhaler to use if I need it. An inhaler. Like that was going to fix it. Daddy went back to work the next day. Same shift, same mine. 3,000 feet underground. Breathing dust so thick you could taste it. Because what else was he going to do? If you're still watching, please consider subscribing to this channel. These stories matter, and your support helps them reach people who need to hear them. I turned 9 in November of 1986. Mama made me a birthday cake from a box, mixed yellow cake with chocolate frosting. Daddy came home early from his shift because the mine had mechanical problems and they'd sent everyone home. He was there for my birthday dinner. That almost never happened. We sat around the kitchen table. Me, Tommy, Mama, Daddy. Mama had made fried chicken. My favorite, we sang happy birthday. And I blew out 9 candles. I made a wish that Daddy would stop coughing. It didn't come true. That night, after cake, Daddy helped me with my homework. I had math problems, addition and subtraction, carrying numbers. I was struggling with one problem, getting frustrated. Daddy leaned over my shoulder. Look here, Beck, you just gotta. He started coughing. Not just a little cough, a big one, the kind that bends you in half. He stood up fast, knocking his chair back, and went to the kitchen sink. Turned on the water, coughed and coughed and coughed. I heard him spit. The water ran. He coughed more. When he finally stopped, he just stood there, gripping the edge of the sink, his back to me. His shoulders were heaving. Daddy? I'm fine, baby. Just give me a second. But he didn't sound fine. Mama came into the kitchen. She put her hand on his back. Gene, I'm fine. You need to go back to the doctor. I just went. That was 7 months ago. And he said the same thing. He always says, it's coal dust. There's no cure for coal dust, Linda. You just live with it. He turned round. His face was gray. Actually gray, like someone had drained the color out of him. But he smiled at me. Come on, Beck, let's finish that homework. We finished it. He helped me through every problem, patient as anything, even though I could hear that whistling sound every time he breathed. That was the first time I felt scared. Really scared. Not confused. Not worried. Scared. Because I looked at my daddy, my strong, tough daddy who could carry me on his shoulders and fix anything that broke and knew everything about everything, and he looked small. He looked breakable. Winter of 1987 was brutal. We had snow from January through March, and the heating in our company house barely worked. Mama would turn the oven on and leave it open to heat the kitchen. We'd all huddle in there on the coldest nights. Daddy's coughing got worse in the cold. At night, I could hear him in the bathroom at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., coughing and coughing. The walls were thin and sound traveled, and there was no way to not hear it. Tommy's room was on the other side of the house. He told me later he slept with his pillow over his head those months because he couldn't stand listening to it. But I couldn't block it out. I'd lie there in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to my father cough his lungs out, and I'd pray. I'd pray to Jesus, like they taught us in Sunday school. I'd pray for Daddy to get better. I'd pray for the coughing to stop. It never did. One night in February, I remember the date because it was Valentine's Day. February 14th, 1987, I woke up to Mama crying. Not loud crying. Quiet crying. The kind you do when you're trying not to wake anyone up. I got out of bed and tiptoed to their bedroom. The door was cracked open. Mama was sitting on the edge of the bed in her nightgown. Daddy was in the bathroom again, coughing. I could see the light under the door. Mama had her face in her hands. Mama. She jumped, looked up, wiped her eyes fast. Becca, honey, what are you doing up? I heard you. She patted the bed next to her. I climbed up and sat down. From the bathroom, Daddy coughed and coughed and coughed. Is Daddy going to die? The words just came out. I didn't plan them. Mama's face crumpled. She pulled me into her arms, held me so tight I could barely breathe. No, baby, no. Your daddy's strong. He's going to be fine. But he coughs all the time. I know. It's getting worse. I know. Why doesn't he go to a different doctor? Not the mind doctor. A real doctor. Mama pulled back and looked at me. Her eyes were red. Baby, we can't afford a different doctor. We have insurance through the mine, and it only covers Dr. Parsons. But Dr. Parsons isn't helping. I know. We sat there, holding each other, while Daddy coughed on the other side of that thin bathroom door. Finally, the coughing stopped. The faucet ran. The door opened. Daddy came out, saw us sitting there. He looked exhausted. His face was gray, his eyes were bloodshot, and there was a fine tremor in his hands. Hey, he said softly. What's going on? Becca couldn't sleep, Mama said. Daddy came over and sat down on my other side. Put his arm around me. Bad dream. I shook my head. Just couldn't sleep. He kissed the top of my head. I could smell the lava soap on his hands, and underneath that, something metallic and wrong. Want me to tell you a story? Okay. He told me about the time when he was a kid, and he and his brothers caught a raccoon in a trap and tried to keep it as a pet. It was a funny story. He made it funny. He did voices for the raccoon and everything. By the end, I was laughing. But the whole time he was telling it, I could hear that wet sound in his chest when he breathed, and I knew Mama had lied. Daddy wasn't going to be fine. In May of 1987, the mine laid off 30 workers. Daddy wasn't one of them, thank God. But our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was, and the Pattersons' oldest son, and Tommy's best friend's dad. Those families moved away within 3 months. Just packed up and left, looking for work somewhere else. 17 houses on Slate Creek Road became 14. Then 12. The company houses that emptied out just sat there, windows dark, yards overgrown. It felt like our whole world was shrinking. Daddy picked up extra shifts when they were available. 6 days a week sometimes. I'd watch him come home at midnight, so exhausted he could barely stand, covered in coal dust from head to toe. He'd stumble to the bathroom, cough for 20 minutes, shower, eat whatever Mama left for him. Sleep for 6 hours, get up and do it again. I was 10 years old, and I was starting to understand something that I didn't have words for yet. My daddy was killing himself to keep us fed, and there was nothing any of us could do about it. That summer, Tommy turned 14. He got his working papers and started doing odd jobs around town, mowing lawns, hauling trash, helping old Mr. Kimball fix fences. He gave every penny to Mama. For groceries, he'd say, Mama would cry and hug him. Daddy would pat him on the back and say, "Good man, son, good man." But I could see it in Daddy's face. The shame, the defeat. His 14-year-old son was working to help support the family. That wasn't how it was supposed to be. I started noticing other things too. I noticed that Daddy had lost weight. His coveralls hung loose on him. His face looked sunken. I noticed that he'd stopped going to church on Sundays. Said he was too tired. I noticed that when Uncle Ray came over for Sunday dinner, which he did most, Weeksy and Daddy would sit on the back porch and talk in low voices, and Mama wouldn't let me or Tommy go out there. One time I snuck close enough to hear, "You need to see a real doctor, Gene," Uncle Ray was saying. "Can't afford it. Then you need to quit the mine and do what? Anything. Stock, shelves, drive a truck. Anything that doesn't have you breathing that shit 8 hours a day. I make $12 an hour underground. Ray, you know what truck drivers make? 7, maybe 8 if they're lucky. How do I pay the bills on that? How are you going to pay bills when you're dead?" Silence. Then Daddy said, "I got maybe 10 more years of work in me. If I can just get Tommy through high school, get Becca through high school, get them set up to have a better life than this, then it'll be worth it. You won't make 10 more years at this rate, then I'll make 5. Whatever I got, I'll make it count." I backed away from the door. I went to my room. I got under the covers, even though it was 2 p.m. and bright outside. And I understood Daddy knew. He knew he was dying, and he was going to keep working anyway. Because that's what you did in coal country. You worked until you couldn't anymore. You sacrificed your body, your lungs, your life. So your kids might have a chance at something different. It wasn't noble. It was just the only option. If this is hitting home for you, leave a comment about what industry stole your father's health. Mining, factory work, construction. I want to hear your stories. I started 6th grade in August of 1988. Middle school now. New building, new teachers, new rules. One of the first assignments we got was in social studies. Mrs. Chunyang, teacher, maybe 25, fresh out of college, wanted us to research and present on an important local industry. Everyone in class picked coal. Every single kid, because what else was there? I did my presentation on the history of coal mining in McDowell County. Checked out books from the library. Read about how the mines opened in the 1880s. How they built whole towns like ours to house the workers. I learned about the 1912 Paint Creek strike, when miners fought for better wages and the National Guard was called in. I learned about the explosions Monongah in 1907, which killed 362 men. Eccles in 1914, which killed 180. I learned the phrase black lung disease. Coal workers' pneumoconiosis. I learned that it was caused by breathing coal dust over many years, that it scarred your lungs, that there was no cure. I learned that by 1969, it was estimated that 1 in 10 coal miners had black lung. 1 in 10. I presented my report to the class. I had poster board with pictures I'd photocopied from books. I talked about the history, the economics, the dangers. When I got to the part about black lung, I said, "My daddy coughs every morning because of coal dust in his lungs." The doctor says lots of miners cough like that. Mrs. Chen's face changed. She looked at me the same way Mrs. Brewster had back in 1st grade. Like I'd just said something heartbreaking without knowing it. After class, she asked me to stay behind. "Rebecca, does your father have black lung disease?" "I don't know, ma'am. He coughs a lot. He has spots on his lungs." "Has he been diagnosed?" "I don't think so." "He goes to the mine doctor." Mrs. Chen wrote something down on a piece of paper, handed it to me. "This is a clinic in Charleston. They specialize in occupational lung disease. They work with miners. Tell your parents about it." I took the paper. "Yes, ma'am." I gave it to Mama that night. She looked at it for a long time. "Charleston's 3 hours away," she said finally. "The teacher said they help miners." "I know, baby. But your daddy can't take a day off work to drive 6 hours round trip. And we don't have money for a hotel if it takes more than one visit." She folded the paper up, put it in the drawer in the kitchen where we kept bills and coupons and church bulletins. It stayed there. We never went to Charleston. Daddy kept working, kept coughing. In October of 1988, he started using oxygen at night. A tank appeared in their bedroom, green metal, about 3 feet tall. Plastic tubing, a mask that went over his nose and mouth. Daddy hated it. "Makes me feel like an old man," he said. He was 34 years old. But at night, when he couldn't breathe lying down, he'd put on that mask, and I'd hear the hiss of oxygen through the wall. And the coughing would be a little less, but only a little. Tommy stopped talking about working in the mines. He never said it out loud, never made a big announcement, but the poster of the mining machine came down from his wall. He started talking about the army instead. Recruiters came to school, he told Daddy at dinner one night. Said they'd pay for college if you enlist. Daddy looked at him for a long moment. You thinking about that? Maybe? I don't know. Just thinking. Daddy nodded slowly. Army's not a bad option. Mama's fork clattered on her plate. He's 14 years old, Gene. I know how old he is. I'm saying when he's 18, Army's not a bad option. Better than the mine. Those 4 words hung in the air. Better than the mine. Daddy had never said that before. Tommy looked down at his plate. I saw his jaw working. Mama's eyes filled with tears. Daddy reached over and squeezed her hand. It's okay, Linda, but it wasn't okay. Nothing about any of this was okay. Christmas of 1988 was small. Money was tight, was always tight, but it was tighter that year. The mine had cut overtime. Daddy's hours were down. Mama worked an extra shift at the grocery store. Nights now, stocking shelves after her regular register shift. Tommy worked whenever he could find work. I was 11. Too young to work legally, so I just tried not to ask for anything. On Christmas morning, there were a few presents under our scraggly tree. Tommy got a new winter coat from the Goodwill used, but in good shape. I got a new notebook and a set of colored pencils. Daddy got a carton of Marlboro Reds from Mama. Mama got a scarf that Daddy had bought from the company store. We pretended it was enough. We ate ham that the church had given us from their Christmas charity basket. Mama made sweet potato casserole and green bean casserole and rolls. Daddy sat at the head of the table, and every few minutes he'd have to stop eating to cough. He'd grab his napkin, cough into it, fold it back up. The napkin would have dark spots on it. We all pretended not to see. After dinner, we watched It's a Wonderful Life on TV. It was a tradition. But halfway through, Daddy fell asleep in his chair, his head tilted back, his mouth open. He was snoring, but it wasn't normal snoring. It was wheezing. Every breath was a struggle. Tommy turned up the volume on the TV, so we wouldn't have to hear it as much. That's what we'd become. A family turning up the TV to drown out the sound of our father suffocating. In February of 1989, Daddy collapsed at work. Mama got the call at 4 p.m. She'd just gotten home from the grocery store. I was doing homework at the kitchen table. The phone rang. Mama answered. I watched her face go white. What happened? Her voice was sharp. Izzy, pause. Where are you taking him? Pause. I'll be right there. She hung up, looked at me. Daddy collapsed in the mine. They're taking him to Welch Community Hospital. I need you to stay here with Tommy until I get back. Is he okay? I don't know, baby. She grabbed her purse and keys and left. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my math homework, not seeing any of it. Tommy came home an hour later. I told him what happened. We sat on the couch together, not talking, waiting. Mama called at 7 p.m. Daddy had pneumonia. They were admitting him. Is he going to be okay? I asked when Tommy let me talk to her. The doctors are helping him, baby. He's going to be in the hospital for a few days. Can we come see him? Not yet, but soon. She came home that night at 10 p.m., exhausted. Daddy stayed in the hospital for 6 days. When he came home, he looked like a different person. He'd lost more weight. His skin was gray, he moved slowly, like everything hurt. But he smiled at me when he came through the door. Hey, Beck, hi, Daddy. I hugged him. He felt like bones. The mine gave him 2 weeks off to recover. Paid leave, which was a miracle. He spent most of those 2 weeks in bed, hooked up to the oxygen tank, sleeping 16 hours a day. When his 2 weeks were up, he went back to work. Because he had to. Because we needed the money. Because there was no other choice. That spring, I started having nightmares. In the dreams, I'd be at school, and someone would come to the classroom door and call my name. I'd walk to the office, Mama would be there, she'd be crying, and I'd know Daddy was dead. I'd wake up, gasping, my heart pounding, and I'd lie there in the dark, listening for the cough. As long as I could hear him coughing, he was still alive. The cough became my reassurance. Isn't that twisted? The very sound that was killing him was the only thing that let me know he was still breathing. I turned 12 in November of 1989. I was in 7th grade now, starting to understand the world a little more, starting to see the cracks in everything. Our town was dying. More families left, more houses sat empty. The mine cut shifts again. Daddy was down to 4 days a week. Mama picked up a third job cleaning houses for rich people in Bluefield, 2 towns over. Tommy was applying to every scholarship he could find. He was a junior in high school now. Grades good enough for college if we could figure out how to pay for it. He'd stopped talking about the army. Now he was talking about getting out entirely. Going to college in Virginia or North Carolina, somewhere far from here. I didn't blame him. I wanted out too. Even at 12, I knew this place was a trap. In December of 1989, Daddy had another collapse. This time at home. He was in the bathroom. Of course, he was in the bathroom coughing. And then we heard a loud thud. Mama screamed. Tommy got there first. Kicked the door open. Daddy was on the floor, unconscious. Blood on his face from where he'd hit the sink on the way down. Mama called 911. It took the ambulance 40 minutes to get to our house. 40 minutes. In a city, that would be criminal. In rural West Virginia in 1989, that was just how it was. By the time they got there, Daddy was awake again. Disoriented, confused, they took him to the hospital anyway. Kept him overnight. Ran tests. The doctor, a real doctor this time. Not Dr. Parsons, told Mama that Daddy's lung function was at 43%. Less than half of what it should be. He said Daddy needed to stop working in the mine immediately. He said if Daddy kept working underground, breathing coal dust, he'd be dead within 2 years. Mama came home and told Daddy what the doctor said. We were all in the living room. Me, Tommy, Mama, Daddy. Daddy was sitting in his chair, the oxygen cannula in his nose. He listened to everything Mama said. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What's that doctor know about bills? What's he know about feeding a family? What's he know about anything except his fancy medical degree? Jean, I'll be fine. Linda, I've been working that mine for 15 years. I'll work at 15 more if I have to. You won't live 15 more years if you keep this up." Her voice cracked. Daddy looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his face just broke. "I know," he said quietly. Mama started crying. Tommy stood up and walked out of the room. I just sat there, and Daddy looked at me. Our eyes met. I was 12 years old, and I knew I was watching my father give up. Not give up on living. Give up on the possibility that there was any other way to live. He went back to work the next week. The 1990s began, and with them came changes. The mine cut more shifts, then cut more workers. Then announced they were closing the deep shaft and moving to mountaintop removal machines instead of men. Explosives instead of pickaxes. Daddy's job was eliminated in March of 1991. After 16 years, just like that, they gave him 2 weeks severance pay. And a handshake. And told him he was eligible to apply for service jobs if any opened up. None did. For 3 months, Daddy was unemployed. We went on food stamps. Mama's 3 jobs barely kept us afloat. Tommy graduated high school and enlisted in the Army because there was no money for college. He left for basic training in July of 1991. Mama cried for 3 days straight. Daddy shook his hand and told him to make us proud. Then he went to the back porch and smoked an entire pack of cigarettes in one sitting and coughed until he vomited. I was 13 years old. In August of 1991, Daddy finally got a new job. Not mining. Working at the car wash in Bluefield, minimum wage. $4.25 an hour. He worked there for 2 years, washing cars, breathing in soap fumes and exhaust. Still coughing, still declining. The oxygen tank became a permanent fixture. He wore the cannula all the time now, even at work. People stared, he didn't care anymore. In 1993, he couldn't work at all anymore. He applied for disability. Social Security, disability insurance. They denied him. Said he could still work sedentary jobs. He appealed. They denied him again. We got a lawyer, a free one from Legal Aid. It took 2 years. 2 years of appeals and hearings and medical records and waiting. Finally, in 1995, they approved him. $734 a month. For a man who'd spent 18 years destroying his lungs to pull coal out of the ground so people could have electricity, $734 a month. I was 18 by then. I'd graduated high school. I'd gotten a scholarship to West Virginia University, not a full ride, but enough. I was getting out. Tommy was stationed in Germany with the Army. Mama was still working 3 jobs, and Daddy was dying. He was 41 years old, and he looked 70. He weighed 130 pounds. He couldn't walk from the bedroom to the kitchen without stopping to rest. He was on oxygen 24/7, and he was still coughing up black. I left for college in August of 1995. I cried the whole 3-hour drive to Morgantown because I was happy to be leaving, and I felt guilty for being happy. Daddy had worked himself to death so I could go to college. And I was abandoning him. That's what it felt like. Abandonment. I called home every week. Mama would update me. Daddy had a good week. Daddy had a bad week. Daddy's in the hospital again. Daddy's home. I came back for Thanksgiving my freshman year. Daddy was in a hospital bed in the living room. He couldn't do stairs anymore, so they'd moved a bed downstairs. He was conscious, but barely. The oxygen was at full blast. I sat next to him and held his hand. "Hey, Daddy." His eyes opened. He smiled. "Hey, Beck, how's college?" Each word was an effort. "It's good. I'm doing good. That's good." He coughed. It sounded wet, rattling. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him and shake him and yell, "Why didn't you quit sooner?" But I didn't. I just sat there and held his hand and lied. "You're going to be okay, Daddy." He squeezed my hand. He knew I was lying. I knew he knew. I went back to school after Thanksgiving. I got the call on December 18th, 1995. I was in the library, studying for finals. My roommate came running in. "Becca, you need to call home. Right now." I knew. I called. Mama answered on the first ring. "Baby, when?" "An hour ago." Peacefully. In his sleep. I didn't cry, not then. I just said okay, and hung up. I walked back to my dorm. I packed a bag. I drove home. 3 hours in the dark. When I walked into the house, Daddy was still in the hospital bed. They hadn't come to get the body yet. Mama was sitting next to him, holding his hand. I walked over, looked down at him. He looked peaceful. For the first time in years, his face wasn't tight with pain. He wasn't coughing. He was just still. I touched his hand. It was cold. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I don't know if I was apologizing to him or to myself. He was 41 years old. He'd been mining coal from age 23 to 39. 16 years underground. 16 years breathing dust. And it killed him. Not immediately, slowly. Over years and years, until there was nothing left. The funeral was on December 22nd, closed casket. Half the church showed up, all the miners who'd worked with Daddy. All the families we'd known. Uncle Ray gave the eulogy. He talked about Daddy being a good man, a hard worker, a loving father. He didn't mention the mine. He didn't mention coal dust. He didn't mention that Daddy had been killed by his job, as surely as if there'd been an explosion. Everyone knew. Nobody said it. After the funeral, we went to the cemetery. They lowered Daddy into the ground. The preacher said some words. We threw dirt on the casket, and that was it. David Eugene Holloway, 1954 to 1995. Beloved husband and father. That's what the headstone said. It should have said, killed by Consolidation Coal Company. But it didn't. I'm 49 years old now. Daddy's been dead for 31 years. I got my degree. I became a teacher. I moved away from West Virginia to North Carolina, where the air is cleaner and people don't cough black. Tommy did 20 years in the Army, retired, lives in Virginia now. Mama lived in that company house until 2003, when Consolidation finally sold it. She bought a small place in town. She's 74 now, still alive, still strong. We don't talk about Daddy much. It hurts too much, but I think about him all the time. I think about how I normalized his suffering. How I heard him coughing every single morning of my childhood and thought it was normal. How I watched him get sicker and just accepted it because everyone told me that's how it was. That's coal country. That's the job. Men sacrifice their bodies. Families sacrifice their fathers. And corporations make billions. I think about the fact that Daddy made about $12 an hour at his peak. And he traded his lungs, his health, his life for that. So we could eat. So we could have a house. So Tommy and I could maybe, possibly, have a better life than he did. And we do. We have better lives. But at what cost? I'm a teacher now. I make decent money. I have health insurance. I have a retirement plan. I'll never have to choose between my lungs and my rent, because my father made that choice for me. He spent his lungs so I wouldn't have to spend mine. And I'm grateful. But I'm also angry. I'm so fucking angry. Angry at a system that treats workers as disposable. Angry at corporations that knew that coal dust caused black lung and did nothing. Angry at doctors who told miners it's just part of the job. Angry at politicians who took money from mining companies and blocked safety regulations. Angry at everyone who knew and did nothing. My father didn't have to die at 41 if he'd had access to real healthcare. Too early intervention, to a job that didn't require him to breathe poison for 8 hours a day, he'd probably still be alive. He'd be 71 now. He could have met his grandchildren. Has 3 kids now. He could have walked me down the aisle when I got married. He could have retired, gone fishing, lived. But he didn't get that. Because he was born poor, in a place with one industry, and that industry ate him alive, and spat out his bones, and moved on to the next worker. There are still men mining coal, still men coughing black, still families watching their fathers die slowly, still corporations profiting off human suffering. If you grew up in coal country, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, I need you to understand. This isn't a story about one man. This is a story about thousands of men, tens of thousands. This is American capitalism at its most brutal. We built this country on the backs of workers we were willing to sacrifice. And we're still doing it. Different industries now, maybe Amazon warehouses instead of coal mines. Gig economy instead of company towns. But the principle is the same. Your body is worth less than profit. If you're watching this and you're angry, good. Be angry. And then do something with that anger. Vote for people who support workers' rights. Vote for universal health care. Vote for stronger OSHA regulations. Vote for politicians who won't take corporate money. Support unions. Support workers. Because somewhere right now, there's a 6-year-old girl listening to her father cough, and she thinks it's normal, just like I did. And 30 years from now, she'll be making a video just like this one. Unless we change things. So change things. Don't let my father's death be meaningless. Don't let any of their deaths be meaningless. Fight for a world where workers don't have to choose between their lungs and their rent. Where fathers don't have to sacrifice their bodies for their children's futures. Where coughing up black dust isn't just part of the job. If this resonated with you, please leave a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me what industry took your father, your mother, your family member. Let's make these stories heard, because they matter. Our parents mattered, and they deserved better. Thank you for watching.